Right, I'm going to try and record the screen and see if this works. So your first 4-mark question, this is taken from a previous spec, so it's not exactly like you'll have in your exam, but it's the closest one I can get that's of some sort of relevance. So study figure 2, which shows major tectonic plates and margins. Hopefully that looks familiar because we did a bit on the different plates and margins. You've obviously got a key at the bottom there, and why do tectonic plates move as shown in figure 2? If it gives you a figure and if it tells you, especially in the question down here, to look at a figure, then you need to at some stage reference it. So remember that. Only a 4-marker, so you're looking for 4 simple statements or 2 long developed statements. So up to you with that one, but that's the strategy for a 4-marker. So if I were you with this, I'd go right back to the beginning. So in terms of why do the plates move? Well, they wouldn't move without the heat source in the centre of the Earth. So that would be my first point, is heat locked up in the centre of the core of the Earth provides heat energy that radiates outwards. This causes the mantle material to then form convection currents. These convection currents then help to move the plates, pushing them apart or pushing them towards each other. And then I'd probably say something about different types of margins. So you can either get destructive margins as seen around most of the Pacific plate, or you can get constructive margins as seen through most of the Atlantic Ocean, for example. The other thing you could reference here would be slab push and slab pull, because they're the other 2 theoretical ideas as to why plates move, as well as convection currents. So again, you could mention those in there. I know mark scheme for this. Essentially, if you mention convection currents, it's a mark. If you mention slab push and slab pull, it's a mark. Referencing the figure, you'd pretty much have a mark as long as it's relevant there, and you should be developing one of those points at least. So if you've got nice long developed points for that, then obviously give yourself an extra mark for development of those points. So that's the sort of stuff you should have been talking about for that one. Then, as I said, you're not going to get multiple choice anymore. They trialled them for a couple of years. They decided they didn't like them. To be honest with you, I find them very confusing. I'm glad they've taken them out. But again, most of the sample papers that we have, especially if we're not going to get on this year, sadly still have multiple choice. They're a good, quick way of assessing you've understood stuff. But you will get 1 4-mark question instead of 4 1-mark multiple choice questions. The way you would do these is just to read through all of them, rule out the ones that definitely aren't correct, but you may have noticed as you were having to go at these that there's always 2 which it might be, and you've got to work out which one's the best fit. So in the context of natural hazards, what is meant by the term fatalism? So that was one of those 3 kind of ideas or terms that we give for people and how they respond to hazards. So local people take the view that whatever they do will be imminent as a result of the factors beyond their control, so they often leave the area as a result. The first bit could be kind of true, but the second bit hopefully puts you off that idea. They often leave the area as a result. That would be your fear and moving away ones. That can't be fatalistic. So that can't be fatalism, because that one I would put a big cross through. As a view, the outcomes of future hazards are beyond the power of people to control. Individuals, families and communities take little action to mitigate against these hazards. Okay, that sounds logical. That could be a fatalist approach. There's not much you can do about it. So I would be putting a maybe on that one. Local governments realise the area is vulnerable to a particular hazard. They take decisive action in order to avoid fatalities. Well, that's not fatalism. That's actually reacting and doing something about it. So that can't be correct, because fatalism is just a case of going, I can't do much about it. Don't worry. They're taking action, so it definitely can't be C. And people choose to live in areas vulnerable to natural hazards in the belief that the benefits outweigh the risks. They understand they're taking risks with their lives with these choices. Again, there's some consideration there, and that's the one that I'd kind of be a bit torn between. I'd be at the moment torn between B and D. The reason why D is not the answer is that actually they've done some sort of analysis. They've weighed the risks to the costs and they've decided to live there. That's not a fatalist approach. Fatalist approach is very much poor communities who go, nothing I can do about it, I'm just going to live here, and whatever happens, happens. It's up to God whether I live or not. So then I would be going, B is my correct answer, and that is your correct answer. Second one, what is risk sharing as a human response to a hazard? There's one thing, again, if we'd been in the actual classroom, I'd have said to you about this. Risk sharing is usually done via the method of using insurance. So, for example, your parents will pay home and contents insurance. And that's basically your parents will pay a monthly fee to a big pot, to a big company, and you share the risk amongst the thousands of people that all do the same. Most people won't have a flood in their house. I don't know, the bath leaks and ruins the ceiling and the floor or something. For most people on a year-to-year basis, that won't happen. So their money just goes into this big pot. But for the few people it does happen to, they take the money out of that pot. And essentially you've shared the risk of someone suffering some damage from a flood amongst a large group of people, of which only a few will have that. So again, reading through those, now you know that. Hopefully it's made it a bit easier. So government and private companies offer insurance against the impact of a hazard. It requires large numbers of people to purchase the insurance compared to those impacted following the event. So that one I'd be going, yeah, that sounds about right. Families share the risk of the hazard by supporting each other. Well, you do that anyway. It doesn't have to be given a name, does it? Pat each other on the back and say it's all going to be okay. That's not an approach, so that one would definitely be a cross through. Local people pay extra money for additional services which may be required in the event a hazard strikes. It's a type of mitigation. Risk sharing isn't mitigating or stopping it happening. It's essentially saying, if it does happen, what we're going to do about it afterwards. So mitigation is not a type of risk sharing. Mitigation just a posh way of saying stop it. Additional services actually stopping the hazard happening. It isn't risk sharing, so that'll be a big no. Community members understand the risks and agree to live together despite these risks. An element of community cohesion arising out of this approach. Again, that's just an approach of saying we've done the cost benefit analysis and we're deciding to live here. You're not sharing the risk at all. You're just sharing living in that location, and all have similar ideas. So again, that's not at all risk sharing. The one you're looking for with risk sharing is you're taking out insurance, therefore sharing the financial risk that something might happen. That's it. Give yourself marks out of 6. And if you can just ping me an email with those or put them as a comment along with your assignment, that would be great. And I'll just tally and keep record of what you've got. All right. Last video is coming.